All right, I'll go ahead and call our meeting to order. This is our monthly meeting, regular meeting. If everyone at this time will join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Everyone, please stand and say our pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. We'll move down to approving our agenda. We do have a couple of changes. I need to amend the agenda to add an item. I'll make a motion to amend the agenda by adding item S to consider approving participation in state set-aside funds and assurances for ESSER 2. Second by Mr. Johar. All in favor of amending the agenda and adding item S, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? I hear none. I need to add another motion. This will be to add migrant student field trip to the field trips and the board consent agenda items.
I'll second.
All in favor of adding migrant student field trip to the field trip in the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I hear none. Now we need a motion to approve the amended agenda to reflect item S and the board consent agenda item added to the agenda. A motion by Mr. Johar.
Second.
Second by Ms. Wells. All in favor of approving the amended agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I hear none. We'll move down now to Ms. Embry with recognitions.
Good evening, board members and guests. I've got several students to recognize this evening for achievements over this past month. I am once again going to attempt to share my screen. Ms. Rager, can you see that?
Yes.
Wonderful. Awesome. Okay. So our first recognition tonight is going to be our Bremen Elementary Student Energy Team. This year was the first year that Bremen has had a student energy team. Their goal was to learn as much as they could about energy conservation and energy efficiency so they could have a positive impact on the energy consumption in their community, their school, and their homes. The team met both virtually and in person beginning in October, once a month on Wednesdays. They constructed energy efficient model houses. They completed a school energy audit using different energy measuring tools, and they created community awareness projects. To compete in the National Energy Education Development NEED project, the team had to create slides of their work. Under the leadership of their coach, Miss Mandy Toomey, they submitted the presentation, and that led to the Energy Eagles placing both in the state and in the nation with the NEED project. They were recognized as Kentucky Elementary School of the Year and National Rookie Elementary School of the Year. Each of you board members should have been given a copy of the team's presentation that they submitted. You're welcome to go through that and see all the exciting things that they did throughout the year. We would just like to say congratulations to the Energy Eagles, and that consisted of Blair Barber, Gage Edwards, Madeline Fields, Maggie Fleener, Jude Gardner, Hannah Hardesty, Lane Harper, Reese Harper, Isaac Lindsay, Ivan Sparks, Miles Thomas, Reese Willis, and of course, Coach Mandy Toomey. So congratulations to the Energy Eagles. Next, we're going to go to our bass team. I'm sure you've all heard. Congratulations to Camden Harris and Lane Tooley on winning the KHSAA State Bass Tournament. They had a 2-day total of 30 pounds and 8 ounces. We'd also like to say congratulations to Coach Cody Napier and Coach Toby Harris on a great season. And so that you know, Camden is a senior, and he is the son of Toby and Melissa Harris. And Lane is a senior and is the son of Ben and Holly Tooley. And my final recognition tonight focuses on attendance. So Stetson Childress, he is a senior at MCHS. He has had perfect attendance throughout his entire high school career. This week, he was awarded the 2nd Region Director of Pupil Personnel Attendance Scholarship for $500. Stetson is the son of Angela Childress, and he has signed to participate in the cross-country team with Bethel University in McKenzie, Tennessee. So congratulations, Stetson. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you all very much.
And congratulations to all of our students. We as board members are all very proud of the work that you have done. We'll move down now to our treasurer's report. Mr. Letzinger.
Good evening, Chair and Rager, board members. Share my screen here. Can you all see that?
I see you.
Uh-oh. Now I'm the one that can't do it.
You need help from Carla?
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna have to get her. Come over here. There we go. How about now?
Yes.
Can you see me now? Or
You're good.
okay. All right. So I'm bringing you the financials as of April 30th. So the revenues this month, our beginning balance is down by about 295,000 at 30.1 million. Our monthly receipts are down 394,000 from last month and down 270,000 from the same period last year. SEEK is down 159,000, and some of that's offset on some of the FSBK money that we have to match. Federal is down 18,000, and those are just the reimbursements that we submit for. State is down 143,000. Again, this is just some of the things that we submit for. Taxes that we received are up 152,000. Other is up 39,000, and food service is down 183,000. But bear in mind, this is only, especially with food service, this is only in receipts comparison. So they're still quite up. And then daycare is down 85,000 in receipts for total monthly receipts of about 2.6 million for total receipts of 3.7 million. So expenditures, our accounts payable at 976,000. It's up approximately 141,000 when compared to the same period last year. The significant bills in April were 136,000 to the Trains Park Center. Payroll is down 10,000 versus April of 2020 for a total expense of 3.6 million. The breakdown of the accounts payable, general fund was about 700,000, food service and daycare 158,000, and fund 2 was 118,000. Further breakdown, total accounts payable 974,000. Again, general fund was nearly 700,000. Fund 2, school activities 118, food service daycare 158,000. So that was kind of the same thing. I apologize. The ledger balance at the end of the month is 29.1 million, with a bank balance of 21.885. Outstanding checks at 564,000 for a cash close of about 21.3 million. The breakdown, general funds down 147,000. Special fund revenue, or fund 2, is down about 1.1 million. Again, those are funds that will be requested, and so that should not be in the negative too much longer. Construction is down 24,000. Debt service did not move. Food service is up 276,000. Daycare about 7,000. So for a total about 1 million down. The extended financial picture. In September of 21, we expect to have about 22.7 million in the bank. Any questions?
What construction do we got going on now after Bremen Park?
I just got the last bill, and it is that 30,000 that's outstanding. So pay that, and then it should be done. And then really the other projects that we have going that will be getting started will be the roofing, the blacktop, and then the gym floor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What did you say caused the variance in special revenue fund two, over $1 million?
It's just, we did a lot in payroll this time, and we put it to the ESSER funds more so this time than we have in the past. We shifted a lot off of general fund onto that ESSER, so we just have to request them.
Thank you.
I think it was about 800,000 that got shifted to ESSER this month.
Thank you.
All right, are there any further questions? Now I need a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
I make the motion to approve.
A motion by Ms. Wells, a second by Mr. Bowers. All in favor of approving the treasurer's report, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I hear none. And moving on to payment of bills and salaries, Mr. Buttsinger.
Thank you again, Sharon Rader. This month we bring it's May 2021 board bills, 162,000 in all funds, 124,000 of that is general fund, and 36,700 is fund two, and there were no significant bills in this group. It was just all regular items.
Any discussion? I need a motion to approve payments of bills and salaries. A motion by Mr. Jomar, second by Ms. Barr. All in favor of payment of bills and salaries, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? I hear none, and we'll move down now to public participation.
Thank you.
Everyone?
No one signed in.
Okay, thank you. We'll move down now to the administrative report and superintendent report, Mr. Davis.
Okay, thank you, Chairman, regular board members. Looking at the length of the agenda, I asked principals, we're not going to do the principals reports tonight, just in the interest of time. We'll bring them back in June. As you know, some upcoming things. Tomorrow night is graduation. It's 7 o'clock. Prom is Saturday night, and I'm sure you guys saw, some of you were able to go out and see some of the seniors yesterday in Central City and Greenville. And I'm so appreciative of our community and all that some folks did to make that work. And that all started with a group of senior students that we met with. Don and I met with and Najee, I believe your daughter was one of those, and we met with them over a period, probably a month and a half. And then Tammy Piper came in and said, hey, what can we do? And they had ideas. All you had to just ask. And so really appreciate them as well. But it's been a tough year. I mean, it just has. But I do appreciate our staff, what they've done to come through. You guys, our parents and our community. You know, we've just tried to do the best we can. And the way they've come together at the end to try to help these seniors end on a more positive note than it has been all year. Saw more smiles, I think, yesterday. I'm losing track of when they did their march. I think it was yesterday. That was really cool. So, you know, we're outside the football field. The weather looks perfect for tomorrow night and Saturday. So I just appreciate a lot of folks that's helped make a bad year less bad, I guess you could say. And it feels like next year is looking better. It feels like, you know, even in June, we're hearing the governor say a lot of the mandates are coming off, and that sounds great. A lot of the restrictions. So it feels like we're moving in the right direction, and next year will be a relatively normal year. When I say normal, normal wasn't always good. So we've learned some things through this that I think, just like that march through Central City and Greenville and what they did and the way they drive in from the convention center on graduation, those were COVID induced, but I don't think we're going to drop that. I think those are good ideas we just hadn't thought of before. So I look to continue to do some things. We'll still have our Chromebooks next year. We could use those in different ways. So again, just really appreciative to a whole lot of folks, including you guys, that had to make a lot of tough decisions. And had to listen to a lot of, all right, now tell me again what that is. No, tell me again. And we've got a couple of those on the agenda tonight, but we'll talk about those a little later. I do want to say there's a change here at the board. There's a lot of retirees, and I can't name them all, but I will say our very own Lee Freeman is walking off into the sunset. He's retiring, and Brent Hardison will be the new DPP. So longest, the principal job longest is now open. And they'll be interviewing them for that, I guess, in the next couple of weeks or so. So welcome, Brent. Appreciate everything Lee has done. It's been a tough year for him as well. I get a few questions, not a lot, but what are we going to do about virtual for next year? We're just kind of, we've met a lot about it. As of right now, we're kind of sitting tight on it, and we have a MOVE program in place that we could expand a little if needed. We have home hospital, home health in the elementary school that we could use if needed. And the goal is starting next year, 5 days a week, get our kids back in, and it feels like we're headed that way. But it's not that we haven't talked about it, we have. We're just not, right now, we're just watching with some plans in the background that we'll bring to you as needed. We'll probably talk more about that in June. We'll see where we are then. I'm just feeling better and better about it. Our summer schools are starting up soon. I think high school and middle school, we've got, I don't know the number of kids right off, but that's middle and high school early June. Our elementaries are running their summer camps, they're calling them, at the end of July for about 12 days. Each of those, I think, are about 12 days. So that gives some kids some opportunity to try to catch up some of what they missed. And, you know, we're excited that we have ESSER funds to help with that. Actually, it's totally funding that. So that's positive. Let's talk facilities just a little bit. Gym floor, we'll save to later. That's an agenda item. We'll come back to that one. So I'm mainly going to talk about the MOVE and the new cafeteria. I talked to Scott Knoll today. As you guys know, the district facility plan has been approved and sent to the Kentucky State Board for approval. That will it's likely come in June. It could come as late as August, but don't panic on that. That's a formality. What will happen then is once they approve it, we started this project before we had approval with hopes that it would go. So that means we're using general fund dollars to push right now. When that gets approved, then we can move that over to the restricted building fund and use, there's about $750,000 in that. So that's the sticking point there, and we can move that at any time. So that's not a problem, but that's what's going on there. The kitchen and cafeteria project, that's been in the works for, for a while now. Joe Cooper has made several trips, I think, to Bowling Green to look at theirs. And we'll be seeking design development approval in the June meeting for that. And the plan would be then for final approval in July and then start getting bids in August. I did ask Scott to, how long we talk once we get going. And it looks like a 9 to 12 month project potentially once it gets going. So looks like next year will be a little awkward. We'll be working around it, and we can, and we will. And Donna's already been planning for that. I know, Kim, you've been moved into a new school agreement, and you just kind of make do until everything settles. But that won't stop us. But, obviously it's not a great time to be building with, everything costing what it does. But this is where we are. Thank goodness we're in a position with our food service that can help with some of the equipment and all. We're in better shape than we were certainly last year for that. So that's kind of where we are with facilities in general. The moving part is what's starting right now. Actually, it's already been starting as we move our everybody east to west and then south, middle to east. Eric, I think you're on here somewhere. Eric we've already met with Brian and Donna and Jimmy Fleming and Chad and Joe was in on that. All right, what do we need to think of? What are we missing? How soon can we get this done? So, Eric, I know you touched base with those key players again today. If you would talk a little bit about a timeline and what's going on with the actual moving part of this.
Well, we'd like to try to get started in June as much as we can. We're working on finding out what additional pieces of equipment we might need to help facilitate those moves. A lot of what maintenance is going to be doing is running back and forth between the buildings, getting things from east to west and south to east. So the teams that are going to be located on site at each building are going to work on loading trailers and trucks up and getting it off. And then another team is going to be worried about offloading it. So we're going to try to be as efficient as possible and try to, I guess, keep the facilities as nice as possible too, to try to make it so that it's not a lot of work getting the buildings nice while after moving. So there's going to be a lot of moving parts, and really the hard part is figuring out who's first, who's on first, what's on second, pretty much. So
Thank you, Aaron. And our staff members, they're obviously living a lot of their own stuff too, but we're trying, I've asked each principal if they could, if there's a custodian at their building, that they could maybe spare this. I said willing and able to do some lifting, you know, and I'm sure some of us here will be helping too, but that's, I mean, it's a big job. This is a big job, and you kind of got to get everybody out of East, sort of, before you start getting folks coming into East. We'll run into each other. So we've had a lot of talks about this, and I think there's going to be plenty of help, and if they need extra help, then we'll look at that too. We'll figure out a way to do that, or extra trucks or whatever. But, so we think we have a plan, and probably a few days into it, we'll realize we need to adjust and all. We're hoping to get a lot of this done in June, and we're working, and luckily we're working around some the summer school things. It's at, the middle schools will all be at North Middle, which is helpful, and then the high school will all be at West. So you're not having any of the buildings that are actually moving going on there. So that is what's going on with the facilities. As I said, I'll come back to gym floors later. I will say I'm so proud of a lot of kids. You saw what Carla went through, and even in the tough times this year, we've got kids winning state, we've got kids succeeding, and we're just so proud of them. What worries you are the kids that we didn't see as much, and look forward to getting them back in again. We need to lay eyes on them, and luckily the feeding's been a wonderful thing. Joe, do you know how many meals we ended up with? Can you calculate in your head really quickly while we're looking at you? No?
We
Okay.
did.
Well over a
probably-
million, well over a million.
Well over a million.
And that went to all our kids. whether they were there.
974 was on December something.
Yeah, right, so we're probably a million and a
That
half.
was December, 974,000 meals.
And the summer feeding will pick right up after that. We've got more sites now instead of homes. We had some dog issues and some other things, but we worked through them.
Sounds like a post office.
Yeah, so several employees were proud of trying to help make that happen. So that, the other thing I will mention is Eric alluded to the ESSER funds, and I know with the KSBA conference, y'all saw a lot on the ESSER funds. And there's 3 rounds of them. And so the key is, and Eric and I talk a lot, and Eric has the expertise, how do you maximize those dollars to help the kids and help them have fun, and there's only something you can do with this money, and so there's a lot to it. And we have those talks a lot to try to make sure we're getting the most out of them. We're working on a budget for that, and some of those funds have to be expended relatively soon. ESSER 2 is like 2022, ESSER 3, I think 2023 or 24. So we're appreciative of that money, but it's not simple. Any comments on that, Eric?
I mean, you kind of covered it. It really, truly is a puzzle, because if we spend federal dollars on payroll, it adds, about 13% on our certified staff, and then we also have to pay an additional amount for federal health care. So right now we're looking at because we shifted a bunch from the general fund last month and this month to the ESSER funds. We're trying to find that balance of what's going to utilize those funds the best while making sure we're not overexpending them just on salary. We want to be able to save those funds and use them for things like the cafeteria if we can. We're going to work on SFCC and then maybe switch the general fund dollars over the ESSER 3 funds. But it's really a big puzzle, frankly.
And the number one way to help kids is always a good a good staff member. So, last time I think we posted, several jobs, and they've been interviewing there, but interventionist, a good, not just teacher, a good aide, a good whoever, that's the number one way to catch kids up. So we're spending a good chunk of that will be on salaries and will be on staff. Obviously, we have more than just that. So just know we're having those conversations about how best to utilize that. And I believe that concludes my report.
Thank you. And just a note, our personnel actions are in our minutes for you, so everyone has that. We'll move on now to our attendance and enrollment report. Ms. Browning.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm bringing you the attendance report for the 9th month, which ended on May the 19th, 2021. The enrollment numbers we're down 76 from last year, the same month. We're up 3 from the previous month, which would have been month 8, and we're down 87 from the last day of school last year.
Thank you very much. We'll move down now to our board action items. And item A on our agenda is to consider Martin Hall 21-22 season contracts and budget.
Good evening.
There we
Oh,
go.
yeah.
Thank you all for your time tonight. I guess first thing to note is that, and it's at the top of the season schedule and the policy memo, is that no school funding is used for our public season. Those are all sponsor-generated funds, and so that's something to keep in mind. Our plan is to sort of ease people back into the idea of coming out to shows and back into Martin Hall this fall with a couple of low-cost shows, more of a regional basis, with the off-the-record live last summer's partnership virtual concert series with Greenville Tourism. We'll be expanding that to a live event, and then do a sponsor appreciation show evening with Jeffrey Gaines, both those in the fall. And then as we get into spring and hopefully restrictions are in a better spot at that point, moving into our more usual touring shows and bigger shows. We've got the Aquila Theater bringing in The Great Gatsby, which is something that I know our entire English department is very excited about. And finally getting the Passing Zone Saves the World comedy show that we've been waiting on for 2 years at that point. And then on the 5th of May, the Force will be with us, hopefully, as we bring in the one-man Star Wars trilogy for Revenge of the Fifth. Total anticipated expenses for that season, including all the full season marketing and contingency expenses, is $40,000. Right now, we have $24,000 that was raised for the 2021 season that obviously we did not use, and we anticipate increasing that up to $34,000 in sponsorship money, and then $8,000 in ticket sales for anticipated income of $42,000, which is $2,000 surplus. One thing to note about those ticket sales as well is that all of those anticipated numbers are factoring at a reduced capacity, which hopefully we will not still be at the time. Better safe than sorry.
Is there any questions? If not, I need a motion to consider the Martin Hall 21-22 season contracts and budget.
I'll make a motion.
A motion by Ms. Wells, second by Mr. Dohar. All in favor of considering the Martin Hall contracts and budgets, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I hear none. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you all very much.
Move down now to item B, to consider contract with HPS Bidding Services. Ms. Cooper?
Chairman, regular board members, I'm coming tonight to ask if you all would consider allowing me to purchase a bidding contract with HPS program. They came in and did an evaluation on our buying, and the cost for this membership is $3,275 per year, with an estimated savings of our program of $98,086.
And she's coming tonight because she has no internet service at home.
They won't give
We're
me a
glad to see you
hotspot.
though. All right, need a motion to approve. A motion by Mr. Bowers. And go ahead. Ms. Bartle, second. All in favor of considering the contract with HPS Bidding Services, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? I hear them, thank you. And item C is to consider info handler, Easy ED Med contract for Medicaid billing. Ms. Kinley.
Good evening, everyone. So yes, tonight we're bringing you a contract for Easy Ed Med, which is a direct billing service that we have used for many, many years through KSBA. And for whatever reason, I don't know what that is, KSBA chose to go with a different company this year, CompuClaim. We have tried to work through the bugs with CompuClaim this year, and we just haven't been able to get back to where we were with Easy Ed Med. So we have talked with Easy Ed Med and have all the benefits listed out here on your decision paper. And so you can look through those. I'm sure you've already taken a look through there, but this process would be very seamless to get back with Easy Ed Med. The biggest benefit is all of our speech therapists and occupational therapists are very excited. The program is extremely user friendly, and will actually the fee that they will charge us is only 5% to do this service for a guaranteed 3 years, whereas CompuClaim is 6%. So we'll actually see more back to the district for our students. So you have a copy of the contract there, and so I'm bringing it to you all tonight, and hopefully you will approve.
Thank you.
Did KSBA say why they changed, or?
It has been a year-long process and a lot of conversation back and forth. It has been a statewide conversation. We've had many, many meetings at the regional level as well as the state level. And I looked yesterday in the West Kentucky region, every district in the WKEC region is switching back that I know of, except for 9, and they just haven't said yes or no yet. So I think it's going to be a shift back toward Easy Ed Med across the state.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
And second by Mr. Bowers. All in favor of considering the info handler Easy Ed Med contract for Medicaid billing, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I hear none. Thank you. Now we're down to a review of our certified evaluation plan. Mr. Bowers.
Okay, I bring to you just some minor changes to our certified evaluation plan. We have to review these every year. If there are no substantial changes, it does not have to go back to KDE, and there are none this year. After consulting with our 50/50 committee, the only changes were we had some employees take some different positions who couldn't serve in a current role. For instance, a teacher became a principal or something like that. We have to have, 50% administration, 50% teachers on this committee. So basically the only change is we have to get you guys, and Ms. Rager, I'll have a paper for you to sign, an assurance document. Is just the date change for this next year on the document and those name changes on the listing of members.
A motion by Mr. Zohar. Second by Ms. Harrell. All in favor of reviewing the certified evaluation plan, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I hear none. Stay right there. All right, so we're down to item E, consider bidding DOT physicals for 21-22 school year.
This is something that we do every year. We have approximately 70 different, of our drivers who have to have these physicals done yearly. And we put this bid out every year, so we're asking to do the same for this year.
Need a motion?
Motion.
A motion by Mr. Zohar,
Second.
second by Mr. Bowers. All in favor of considering bidding the DOT physicals for the 21-22 school year, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. We'll go down now to item F, approve the contract with A+ Leadership for the executive coaching program. Ms. Wright.
Okay, in the past, we've held sessions which have identified leadership styles among our administration teams within our schools in the district. This is to help them understand their optimal school level working conditions. Next, we identified a group of employees who have potential to become administrators within the next decade. But in 2019, we had 3 administrators complete this program, and we want to continue the program. We actually wanted to continue it last year, but we had a pandemic, so we couldn't. Didn't feel like we could do it effectively last year. Our 3 that participated in 2019 were Ms. Donna Bumps, Mr. Hardison, Brent Hardison, and then Brian Lyle. This year, the 3, if this is approved, who have agreed to participate this year will be Ms. Stacy Jones, Mr. Scott Blake, and Mr. Grant Sharp. So what I'm asking for is approval of that contract. The funding for this will come from, and I believe, let me double check, I think it's Title IV funds, yes.
Any discussion?
Make a motion.
I have a motion by Ms. Bard,
Second.
second by Mr. Bowers. All in favor of approving the contract with A+ Leadership for the executive coaching program, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? I hear none. We're down now to item G. Consider 2 full-time teaching positions, 3 days a week, 1 math, 1 science at the Renaissance Center for the 21-22 school year. Ms. Browning?
I think this is my last one. I had several this time. This is basically, we come before you every year. This is a way that we feel like we can adequately support the students at the Renaissance Center. This arrangement has worked out wonderfully for the last few years, but because our teachers are retirees, and most of the time the people that apply for this position would be because of it not being a full-time job, we ask every year, and we have to post every year these positions. So I'm asking to post those for the 21-22 or 21-22 school year. I think that year's wrong. No, that's right. Okay.
Any discussion? I'll make a motion to approve. Second by Mr. Johar. All in favor of considering the teaching position for the Renaissance Center, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? I hear none. All right, item H, consider approving supplemental year Senate Bill 128. Mr. Davis, we haven't heard about this yet.
Let me sum up about 1 month of 50 hours worth of work in about a minute or 2 here as best I can. I know Mr. Perkins sent out a summary to you guys. As you know, they had, our folks had until May 1st to apply for this. And I will say, without going into, the specifics, which you guys have a lot of those, but we had several, most of which were from the elementary level, which is a positive, as far as trying to work through this. I don't want to go through everything. I will say this has been taking a massive amount of time and meetings and hours trying to understand this. It's just like every day something new came from this that was unintended and not thought about. One reason, I think, is maybe it was no superintendents or educators were brought in when this was laid out there. I think it was well intended, and it seems simple, but it's not. And so remember that what you're going to be doing tonight, you're going to either approve all or none. We can't just say elementary we approve, which is typically a little easier to deal with. It's pretty much kind of a P5 year. High school gets a little trickier with graduated seniors in some cases, and which classes to take and all that. So basically, I think, I've talked to all the principals. I think we can do it. I think for a lot of kids, it's a good thing. And there may be a few that you worry about, but our job has been, in my mind, to try to understand this and try to think of each case that could come up. Number one, how does it affect the district? Because that has to matter. Kids matter the most, but it has to matter how does it affect the district. If you had 75 kids, 100 kids at the high school that wanted to do it, one of the ways that we're judged is not just test scores, it's 4-year graduation rate. Well, the government makes no exemption for this. So those kids would all take an extra year to graduate, and that would ding us a little bit. Now, is that more important than what's for a kid? No. Does it matter? Something that we have to consider that, of course. There were case after case like that we had to kind of try to work through. As a matter of fact, I got another update from the High School Athletic Association last Friday on this bill. So all those things, as we've worked through them, our job is to understand again, how will it affect the district? And number two, make sure we adequately inform the parents, so they're making an informed decision. So I've asked each principal call each applicant's folks and talk to them. And some have said, okay, that's not for me. And we even had one the other day that is rescinded. And like, you know, so some I think have put their name in, and after they think about it, they may think, you know, maybe that's not the best thing, because it's a complicated decision for any student. And I don't have a problem with any parent saying, hey, I want to take advantage of this for my kid. We just want to make sure that we've told them, hey, if you turn 19 by August 1st and you're an athlete, you can't play your senior year. If you turn a certain age by 7th grade and 8th grade, you can't play those years if you're an athlete. So you could be in 2nd grade, and if you're not careful, you're forfeiting those years without realizing it. So I think our folks have done a good job of calling these parents and saying, all right, let's talk about your child. And so I think they understand that, but we sure don't want them to make a decision and come back and say, well, you didn't tell me that. What worries you just a little is what's out there that we've missed, even after all this combing through things, because now we also heard a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago maybe, that if you're going to be a Division I athlete, then you have to get through in your first 4 years. That's what D1 looks at. Well, you don't have a lot of D1 athletes, but it does happen, and it could be cross country, it could be some of those other things. So our folks called and talked to them. So I think the people that have chosen to do this or requested to do this, I think they're well informed. And again, in elementary, many cases, and Kim can certainly attest to this, these would be P5 kids a lot of times, and an extra year is a gift, in a good year, often. So we have very few middle schoolers, not a ton of high schoolers, you know, I don't know, a dozen or so, wherever we were there, and the vast majority are elementary. So if the numbers were tilted the other way, I think I'd be kind of saying, guys, we really have to think through this. As it is, what I'm saying to you is we can handle this. We can handle this with our staffing, with our numbers dropping some anyway. We can handle this in our elementaries where the most of them are. And I think for many kids, it is a good thing. Has it been tough? Yeah. Somebody said this was the case example of the law of unintended consequences. They just didn't think all this through. It just keeps unfolding. But I think we finally got to a point where we kind of understand. So boards are doing different things about this. I think most are passing it. Most are seeing it as a positive overall. But we've had a ton of conversation. Folks need to understand. I've talked to you one-on-one, two-on-one calls over and over, trying to make you guys understand what you're voting on. And that's been difficult to try to keep up with this, but I do want to thank a lot of people who have helped unwrap this. But that's where we basically are now. I don't want to spend a 2-hour summary on something that you guys are well aware of. Now, I'm kind of saying for the general public as well. So that's kind of where we are. I will tell you, as a school district, we can handle it. It's been a lot of work, a lot of concerns, but you know, I do see some good coming from kids, and there's still a little work to be done, especially in the high school, if we do approve this, but we'll do it. So that's basically my summary of where I think we are as of now.
Of the numbers we were initially given, about how many now have rescinded from that number?
We're still pretty much the same. There may be 3 or 4, I think, but a lot of them, again, I haven't put a deadline. Mm-hmm. We haven't put a deadline. I don't know if that'll be me or us together. We said, you got to change your mind by now. I think we're fine at least until early August. And close to when school starts, I think we can adjust on this. So I believe several may, as they think through this a little more, I think some may have been 50-50 and like, you know what, let's put our names in and then think about it. So what worries you a little is if we don't do this, and then kids who may have been P5 kids, you know, we kind of missed that because they were thinking this instead of P5, and now the P5 boat is I won't say it's sailed, but it's kind of, it's cranked up. So that worries you a little bit too, because so many are elementary. That's a good question.
I know there's been a lot of changes, just like everything has been for the last year, and there was a lot of discussion at the conference, you know, regarding this. You could hear people as you were walking by talking about it a lot. So, you know, I know things change on the daily, so we just staying informed has been helpful for us. I know. there any other discussion or questions regarding this item?
Do appreciate the continued updates that we have received, that I know it's been constantly changing, and that has been helpful.
Yeah, I
And the
know it's-
individual conversations we've been able to have.
Yeah, and we have, y'all all, everyone needs to know, this is an engaged board, you've all called me. And, you know, it's like, I get another email, I'm like, I gotta forward this to them. And I'm living this every day, and I'm living this every day, and it's still difficult. And I worry about a parent, you know, make sure we're telling them right, and we're informing them, that I worry about making sure you guys are voting on this, and I'm informing you. All the while, I'm a bit confused the whole time about it, it seems. You know, then you'll kind of figure something out, and then, oh, there's an, what if this case? And there may be a few more cases out there, but I'm telling you, well, whatever it is, well, it's, I think it's best for the kids in most cases, and we'll figure it out. If you want us to. Just
All right, any other discussion?
Such a responsibility state put on us.
Absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Well, I just think, you know, if there's any changes along the way, I mean, we just need to continue to reach out to, you know, the parents and guardians of these kids, because
They might be misinformed.
something could change and then they didn't realize at the end, so.
And the good news is they have at least a couple more months. If something comes up, we can call, all right, hey, do you realize this? And there may be a few, you know, back out along the way, and that's okay.
Well, I'm gonna make a motion to consider approving the supplemental year.
Second.
And a second by Ms. Ford. All in favor of considering approving the supplemental year, Senate Bill 128, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I hear none.
Chairman Rigg, I know the next item is the superintendent contract. I do not want to redo a year of this year.
All right. So we're moving down now to item I, which is to consider the superintendent contract. And with some discussion, as a board, we have, come together to, consider offering another 4-year contract to Mr. Davis. With a few changes in the contract. We've had several meetings about that, and discussion, so I will need a motion to consider the extension of the 4-year contract.
Make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Gilmore.
Second.
Okay, second by Mr. Bowers. All right, all in favor of considering the superintendent contract, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I hear none. You're stuck with us 4 more years.
Right back at you.
I would like to say, I cannot imagine, I've said several times, I can't imagine being a teacher during COVID-19. The job I really can't imagine having is this man next to me. The decisions he's had to make every single day regarding families and students and teachers and extended family and people we don't even know about, and protecting everyone in his community, literally protecting us from some of the things that he knew about, that he didn't need to share because he knew it would be one more burden on us. So I'd like to thank Mr. Davis personally, and I know the board feels the same way. That this has been an incredible, this last year was an incredible year, and I can't imagine any other man sitting in his chair doing this better than he did. So
No.
thank you, Mr. Davis.
I would ask you while you're on your contract, you know, to finish all the mergers, at least both the mergers before you take them.
I'm not promising you either.
No.
Part of me was afraid you guys were going to approve this. But I do appreciate that, and I will say, it is difficult, but you know, when you start feeling a little sorry for yourself, you think of the bus drivers and the cooks and the teachers and all, it's just been everyone that has made it work. And I've heard some stories from some other districts, and I do feel supported. Don't always agree with me, I understand that. I would do some things differently when you look back. But as a rule, you know, we've been on the same page, we've marched through this together, and it has been tough, it's been tough on everyone. And so, you know, I appreciate your support, appreciate another contract. It's an honor to work in this job where I've grown up and gone to school, and you know, I don't take that lightly. It's, you know, it's a responsibility, but it's an honor. I never thought I would, you know, I didn't want to be a superintendent when I was in grade school. I never said that. I thought I was going to be an NBA player, and that didn't work out. So, but thank you guys. I appreciate it.
We appreciate everything you have done and what you've continued to do for our students and staff. I know they're all appreciative. I hear it all the time, so we do appreciate you, and you are marvelous at what you do, even if you don't think so sometimes.
My mom says that a lot.
Can't say too much good about him and make his head swell.
I'm waiting till Daryl jumps in and breaks on. Not in 4 years yet. I'm gonna keep working for that, Daryl.
Oh, goodness. All right, so we'll move down now to item J, and that is to authorize the chairman to sign the superintendent contract. That's pretty self-explanatory.
I'll make a motion to authorize the chairman to sign the superintendent contract.
All right, have a motion by Ms. Wells,
Second.
second by Mr. Bowers. All in favor of authorizing the chairman to sign the superintendent contract, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I hear none. All right, so we'll move down to item K, and this is to consider the BG4 for Bremen Ballpark project. Mr. Bluxinger?
All right, let's do this. Okay, this is the BG4. It's when we close the contract between the Board of Education and the builder. So in this case, it'll be between the Board of Education and Westerfield Builders. This signing this allows us to close that contract and then move on to the BG5, which will be the closeout for the project.
Okay. Any discussion? I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Second, Ms. Wells. All in favor of considering the BG4 for Bremen Ballpark project, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I hear none. We'll move on now to item L, consider declaring gym floor repair at Muhlenberg County High School West Campus an emergency.
Okay. Thank you. So on the 3rd and the 4th, you know that the drains backed up and they were overwhelmed, and just we'll go into this a little further on the BG1, but in order to get us to move the BG1 along a little quicker, we have to declare it an emergency. So I'm asking that you declare the gym floor replacement an emergency.
Have a motion by Mr. Zillmer,
Second.
second by Mr. Bowers. All in favor of declaring the gym floor repair at the West Campus an emergency, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? I hear none. Page 2, item M, to consider BG1 for gym floor replacement due to flooding at West Campus. Mr. Blake.
Okay. So this will be the BG1. I have budgeted $350,000. A lot of that is due to the increased cost of lumber at this time, with a total cost of about $367,500. And a lot of this, so the biggest question now was, why is insurance not going to take care of this? And the biggest reason was that we haven't had flood insurance for about 30 years, and none of our buildings are built on the flood on a flood plain at all. That was determined when the buildings were built with KDE and the architects at the time. But the question still remains, why was there no flood insurance coverage? Well, the premiums would vary between $10,000 and $15,000. So if we took and escalated those savings over that time frame, that's $400,000 in savings right there. So that covers the cost of this. That's number one. Number two is that flood insurance, and this is why I've got Ross here to kind of fill in any gaps if there are, but flood insurance is really, it's a federally backed program, much like earthquake insurance and those sorts of things that we have. But flood insurance is meant to be a total loss type situation. And the big thing with flood insurance is that the deductible is 10% of the building's value. So in this case, the building is insured at $33 million, so therefore 10% would be 3.3 million, which far exceeds the cost of the floor. We cannot isolate areas to say we'd like to get flood coverage for just the gym or something like that. So that's why we have not opted for flood insurance, and probably will not seek to do so, even with this current situation. The things that we are going to try to do is, I was out there with Jimmy the other day, and really the biggest thing is that if you're out at West Campus, by the entrance, there's a flood basin that is, as if you're driving in, it's on the right side. And then if you keep going straight through to where the buses park, there is another flood basin that's in between, and there's a grassy area. And then there's also the drains that are by the gym. It started when the flood basin by the road got overwhelmed, which then backed up to the one by the buses, which got overwhelmed, and then by the gym. So it was just a cascading of events. So that's kind of why it did occur. But moving forward, we'd like to just move forward with having an engineer come out and look at it and say, okay, are the drains that we have adequate? And if they are, this was just an event that just where there was nothing that really could have been done, or is that person going to come out and say, yes, there are things that can be done, and then once those things are determined, we'll come back to you all as the board and ask for those sorts of things. So I hope I kind of covered why the flood insurance was not there in the first place and why we probably won't seek it moving forward.
But that is a concern. You're sitting here, I mean, granted, that's a historic flood, but it could happen again in June.
We talked this morning about it. What is the best solution to have a coverage? Because it can happen again, like you said, next month.
Right, and that's tough when it's cost prohibitive, and the problem is, and Ross, I'll let you jump in here in just a second, but the problem is really the only thing that's really in danger of being flooded is the gym. And when you have to tie it, or the way we've understood it, to the entire school, and then you bring that whole cost in, and it's not, that's where we're at. Yeah. And that's what we're trying to work through. And is it a drainage problem that we can work on? That's the actual cause. The symptom is all the other stuff, and so Ross has been on site early on, day one. And I will say this, in spite of how bad it is important. I was at a conference in Louisville when I got the call and drove back. I got back at 10 that morning, and they already had the water off the floor because people came from each school. There were people there from our folks of all jobs were there, trying to get that water off. But the problem was it's under the floor, and trying to get ServPro here quickly enough to do that. And it just, I don't know how long it takes for a floor to go bad, but it doesn't take long. The water wasn't on there a great deal of time. And at one point,
it's not very often that you're gonna get 6 or 7 inches of rain 24 hours.
And that's the thing. That's once. As I understand it, it happened around 1990. That's before they redid the parking lot. And made the parking lot where a lot of the water goes down towards the middle of the parking lot and drains. And I don't think it's happened from outside since then, or it hasn't happened since they redid the parking lot, period. So that's what we've got to weigh. How much money do you put into something like that? That is literally, we had a historic flood, 6 or 7 inches in 2 or 3 hours. But the reality is, like Roger, you said, the reality is we are exposed there. So, I don't want to sugarcoat it for anybody. The first question was, okay, where are we at? Why did we not have this? Let's review this. Should we have had this? And seems like we have some reasonable answers, but it still leaves us in a really difficult spot. So, turn it over to you, Ross. Get your thoughts on this now.
Yeah, first, I'd like to just thank you for the invitation to join you tonight and speak about this, the water damage there at the West Campus on May 4th, and talk about those details and some things that have happened up into this point, and speak, some to what we do moving forward. So when I got the call from Eric initially, he provided me some pictures and videos and so forth, and it was, I was taken back by the amount of water that was on the floor. And as Mr. Davis pointed out, I was probably equally or more taken back by what I saw a few hours later when I got there and how clean it was. So, I mean, how they got that off in that amount of time, or literally within a matter of hours, was I thought was remarkable. But unfortunately, in this case, it's the gym floor. And it's not just any gym floor. It's one that's near and dear to all of us, that gets a tremendous amount of use, and needs to be a certain quality to be able to. And unfortunately, with water damage, is just not something that had it happened somewhere else, perhaps maybe we could have saved it. But again, when I got the call from Eric, was aware of the rains that had happened in a short amount of time, and as you may recall, about this time last year, we were pursuing bids for the insurance for the 2020-2021 year, and so I immediately knew there was an issue, because we didn't have any properties in a floodplain and weren't pursuing flood coverage. But it was helpful to get out there and talk to the staff, Jimmy in particular, and try to learn how a lot of the drainage works, and in an effort to explore provisions under the policy that would allow us to hopefully secure coverage under a different item such as water backup. But unfortunately, when we met late last week with Eric and Mr. Davis, and I shared with them that I had gotten an official denial letter from, in this case, Liberty Mutual, and wanted to be upfront about that. But it's just, I'm not going to say that I wouldn't still hope for something to come of that, but I think I would be very reluctant to try to create any expectation that there's an opportunity to be able to secure coverage under a different item without something, new information or something that comes to light, which again, I think, we all know the rain. But anyways, I think Eric and Mr. Davis did a good job of explaining some of the things that we talked about in that meeting. But one thing that I would add that, I think, well, first of all, the deductible, I think, is where is the number one challenge. And I think from a cost perspective, I think I'm optimistic that we could secure a reasonable amount of flood coverage, which may be $1 million sublimit, maybe a $5 million sublimit, like what you carried for earthquake coverage. But I think the key is the deductible, and as they mentioned, in many cases, there's a percentage deductible like earthquake, where it's not 10% of the loss, it's 10% of the total insured value at that location, which I think in this case at the high school is particularly challenging, because the gym floor in that area of the properties is our number one concern and issue, and the exposure there is not I think proportionate to the overall building, like it may be for some other building owners that could lose an entire building or something. That, but good news, I had started working on some other options that I wanted to pursue ahead of this year's renewal. And as a result of that, in the recent weeks, we've had a lot of conversation about flood in particular. And so I'm going to continue to pursue those options and report back to you. And again, I think number one thing is, can we secure a flat deductible? It may be 50,000, it may be 100,000, but nonetheless, I think I'm going to do everything I can to bring you something, report back to you with some options that allows you to make a choice as to whether it makes sense moving forward or what's the best way to approach things. So be glad to answer any questions, whether now or certainly available at any time to welcome talking about it and sharing. So anybody have any questions or?
Any questions for Ms. Ruthie?
So you gonna work on some way to insure us eventually, you think? At a cheaper cost like we discussed or some other way?
Yes, so
Accepted it out?
yeah, so there's, as Eric mentioned, there's the federal flood program, which I think the U.S. Senate was in session today talking about the reauthorization of it. It's fortunately, there are some options under a private market that, like Liberty Mutual and others, but for the number of insurance companies that there are in the United States, I think it's worth noting the fact that in Kentucky for schools, there's probably 3 primary companies that provide the coverages that schools specifically need. And so, I think trying to figure out, or I'm going to be working towards finding the balance of making sure you get all the coverages that you need as a school, and then additionally, items such as flood and earthquake and all those, what options do they provide in that regard? But yes, I am going to give you some things there to look at here in the coming weeks. So
What seems challenging is that what it would take to flood the rest of the building and have enough of a loss there where you would get somewhere where the deductible would make sense. I mean, it's hard to imagine enough water. It took a historic flood to make the gym flood. What would it take to get into the rest of the school? Which I don't think we can just insure the gym. And so I think that's the challenge. But I mean, there's questions to be answered here, and we've asked them, and there doesn't seem to be any easy answers right now. But it's not a good feeling knowing that we can't come up with something that we are exposed. Of course, we've been exposed for 30 years. But once it happens once, that doesn't mean it can't happen again. So that's this is not where we want to be. It's the worst possible time with lumber and plywood and everything costing what it does. It's just very unfortunate.
Well, and then I will add that right now, again, it's like the cafeteria. I've classed it under general fund, but if I'm about 99% sure that I can shift that to ESSER. So I will more than likely shift that to ESSER, as well as the remainder of cafeteria, after that FFCC. So, if there's a silver lining at all, that might be something to think about as well.
And the other thing is, we've got to have a place for these kids now. And this is going to take a while. And that's why we want to get this as an emergency so we can move on, because, things start now. So we're already trying to figure out how can we utilize gyms. The South Middle gym will still be available. So that's one. Maybe the new Parks and Rec area, where, Jerry has talked to them, explored that, maybe we can use that some. But when you get into an extended period of time here, we're not just looking at the money now. Now we're looking at it affecting kids. Yeah. And so we're working on that too.
Since this happened, will it now affect so that we'll be in a floodplain for the federal purposes, or?
No, so you remain the same
No flood zone?
Yeah, the same level of exposure as you know, from that perspective as you are today. I think, you know, as it relates to Liberty Mutual in this case, since they're been reported to them and had a lot of discussion and talked about a lot of history and things of that nature, you know, I think they had raised some questions about, you know, plans to try to assist from a drainage perspective and so forth before they were probably willing to extend a formal quote themselves. But again, I'm gonna, you know, pursue various options. And one thing I will leave you with too, on a positive note, that I think is always good to share some good news. And while I told Eric briefly, and I'll be sharing with him again in the coming weeks, is there was $160,000 savings in another area of coverage that is a result of a lot of effort and so forth towards safety and reducing injuries and so forth, that I know you would like to, you know, pocket not only this year but in the years to come. I think I did want to at least mention that as at least a positive note that may come at a good time.
What would have saved us is if there'd been a state of emergency. Is that correct? If they're, you know, if they called, you know, if the governor declared a state of emergency, but you're not, you know, that it wasn't widespread enough on state level, even in this area, but that would have.
I'm glad you bring that up, because there, had it been a state of emergency, I think it's something to consider, either in combination with insurance or something you may want to, you know, I think is, you need to consider just the decision whether to purchase it or not. Is FEMA will pay, I think, 75% of uninsured losses as long as you're not in the flood zone. And then I think Kentucky has a fund that will contribute another 12.5%. So, you know, either maybe that could help with the deductible, or, you know, perhaps depending on whether the terms and options are attractive or not, you got that at least there. But again, only if it's an emergency like what I think happened in, what was it, Louisville area or whatever a few months ago. So, but
I will say our experience, our recent experience, Eric and I, with FEMA, is over promising and under delivering totally.
yeah,
I mean, that's just
Yeah,
our experience.
that could take quite some time.
Just curious, if you are in the floodplain, how does that federal insurance, is it that percentage of the total value, or is it a more reasonable deductible, or?
No, if you're in the floodplain, it's going to make it even that much more restrictive. So I think, at least overall, I don't, you know, what deductibles and so forth, or even if you can secure coverage at any cost, you know, it would depend on, you know, what, you know, there's various levels even of a high risk, and it gets a little bit complicated. Yeah, I think it would be,
Like worse.
yeah, yes, in short, so.
I'm asking you to approve the BG1.
We forgot, yeah. All right, at this time, if there's no other discussion or questions, I need a motion to consider the BG1 for the gym floor replacement.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Gilmore,
Second.
second by Ms. Wells. All in favor of considering the BG1 for the gym floor replacement at West Campus, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? I hear none. Thank you, Ms. Ritchie.
Thank you.
And now item N, to consider a memorandum of agreement between Madisonville Community College and the Muhlenberg County Board of Education for the Upward Bound program. Mr. Bluntman?
Thank you again, Chairman Rager. This is for the Upward Bound program. It's designed to improve grades, ACT scores, prepare students for college. And this is the college with the application. I believe it starts in 2022. It's September 2022. I attached the notes that Ms. Bumps provided for me, along with the MOU to this decision paper.
I've had a chance to review that. Is there any discussion regarding the memorandum of agreement?
Motion.
I have a motion by Ms. Barr,
Second.
second by Ms. Wells. All in favor of considering the MOU between MCC and the Board of Education for the Upward Bound program, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? I hear none. So we'll move down now to item O, consider annual KD audit contract with Carr, Riggs and Ingram. Mr. Bluntfinger.
Thank you. Every year, this is something that we do every year. The state has an audit contract that we, as a board, must approve. It's between us and Carr, Riggs and Ingram, and I'm asking that you approve that so we can move forward with our fiscal year 21 audit.
I have a motion by Mr. Johar, second by Mr. Bowers. All in favor of considering the annual KD audit contract with Carr, Riggs and Ingram, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? I hear none. We'll move down now to item P, to consider the 21-22 salary schedule. Mr. Bluntfinger.
Thank you again. This year, we'd like to bring to you all an overall 2% raise for the district. That has applied to across the board. We did add on the extra service salary schedule, we added the summer school planning coordinator, which you all approved last month, but this now is on for the next fiscal year. So we just have to keep that up for the principals that are doing the summer school, for the principals and the administrative team, that whoever they might be splitting that with, for them doing summer school in July, excuse me. In the classified monthly pay scale, we did some better classification for the tech positions. No salary changes were made other than the 2% increase. So we added a computer technology specialist and a tech support manager, which is separated by the amount of education that is required. The longevity salary schedule, we made no changes. The multiplier page, all we did, we adjusted the attendance director to make sure that it was correct moving forward. Any questions?
Is there any discussion? If not, I need a motion to approve and consider the 21-22 salary schedule.
Motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Johar, second by Ms. Bard. All in favor of considering the 21-22 salary schedule, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I hear none. Move down now to item Q. Consider the fiscal year 22 principals combining budget. Mr. Bluntfinger.
This is a procedural item that we have to do every year to comply with Red Book. The principals submit a budget to me every year. I compile them and keep them on file for the fiscal year. So this is for fiscal year 22. This is their budgets. I have attached them as well for you all.
Okay. Any questions? I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Second by Ms. Wells. All in favor of considering the fiscal year 22 principals combining budget, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? I hear none. Move down to item R. Consider the 21-22 tentative budget. Mr. Bluntfinger.
All right, moving along. Okay. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to make note that I changed the graphic, so it's new, something new to look at. Anyway. This is the fiscal year 2022 tentative budget. We'll review. Again, we have our budget considerations, the review of revenues and expenses. So budget considerations that we always take into consideration is the stewardship with the funds, recruitment and retention, revenue changes over time, any pension reform expenses, which this year they have unfrozen the CERS expenses, so they will go up. That is going to expose us to about another $200,000 annually. Major projects that are needed. Again, this is something that we're going to try to shift and focus as much of the ESSER funds as we can to do so, and any maintenance issues. So the paving and those sorts of things. Yeah, they were part of this fiscal year 21, but some of them are having to roll over just in terms of timing of when they'll be paid out. So the revenue line item notables, I decreased the beginning balance just based on where we think we're going to end up on some things. I do foresee, once things shake out, that it may not necessarily need to be decreased, but once we do our audit, I think that will adjust that once more, which it usually does every year. The things that I did not change TVA, and the reason why is just because, you know, I know they probably will not tear that down. I will change that for the working budget, but I just wanted to, as Robbie and I talk to them all the time, we kind of go back all the time saying, okay, what's the updated outlook on when that's going to get torn down? Because again, what came to the state, the items were written off the books, so the amount that came to the state was smaller. However, because those structures are still standing, the amount that comes to us was relatively the same. So I'm going to kind of look at that and get a good feel as to where they're tearing down. They say 3 to 5 years, but I really don't know where that might be. So I will adjust it. I just want to make sure that when I do my projections moving beyond those 3 years, I just want to be as conservative as possible. SEEK, they're still using 18-19 data, and they are using full kindergarten. I got our final SEEK numbers. It's a little bit over 19 million, which is actually an increase from last year. I did not change that quite yet on the tentative budget because I had already completed everything and it's ready to go to the state. And so once I submit it to the state, I will make those changes. But I still do not know what the state may do with SEEK versus ESSER, because as I was reminded by one of my friends at the Kentucky Department of Revenue, they took funds from us and in form of ESSER funds to the tune of $1 million last December. So I'm hoping that they don't do that. I kind of voiced my opinion and said that would be pretty wrong of them to do mid-year, especially after 173 districts have budgeted the use of those funds now that they know where their SEEK dollars stand.
Eric, I want to jump in quickly. He's explained all these things really well, but the full day kindergarten funding instead of half day is a big deal, and that's something we've asked for years. It feels like that may be a bargaining chip that get some votes on SB 563, which was moving some dollars to private schools. Something we talked about, and I think most anticipate that will go away after 1 year. That full day funding. We hope not. We've been pushing for that. So when you start budgeting, I don't think there's any way to budget for that moving forward. I talked to a group today, and I think most would all say it feels like that may have been a little bit of a political move, although we benefited from it. We're happy about it to get that other through. And then what's going to happen after that's through? And this was a 1 year thing. So the full day kindergarten funding worried about that.
Correct. And I would like to add, so we don't know, and this is something that Mr. Freeman and I have discussed, and now Brent and I will be discussing on a regular basis, the decrease in our enrollment. That's something that we're going to have to focus on together, and we don't know if they're going to make an October adjustment, even with the 18-19 numbers. So that's something that Lee and I have talked about extensively. So I did not include the 10.2 million in ESSER 3 funds when I created this. In fact, none of my peers are including the ESSER funds in their budgets just because of the uncertainty. Now, with that said, we are going to be creating a budget in terms of what we'd like to spend that on, and I will be sharing that with you as soon as humanly possible, just so you all have a good idea of what we're doing. And what we're going to do is try to budget half of that, and for right now, just to see where they're going to go with the SEEK dollars. So I think we're trying to be conservative with that. The ESSER funds are we're allowed to spend them for the next 2 to 3 years. So it's not something that we need to expend right away, but we want to be very prudent with that so that we're not expending. I want to preserve our general fund as much as humanly possible and get rid of the restricted funds first. So.
Right, these ESSER funds, it's like, wow, we've got so much money there. But what we have to be careful. It's like you get a tax rebate. You get that big check, you're like, oh, I'm good. But it's a one-time thing, and then if you incur costs, they're going to continue over time, and that goes away. So that's why we've got to be smart about any jobs we add or anything once these funds dry up, and they're going to, although we're super grateful to have them. And we don't want to have added some things that we can't undo, and now it's a real strain on our budget without this.
Correct. Yes, sir. And then so all fund revenues. This includes beginning balance. We have about 79 million. Now, with that said, that's something that, we have discussed with our auditors, because we're not trying to make that climb, but as we move forward, we're discovering that we're going to have some expenses, some of these one-time expenses that we're going to be able to really take care of with some of these funds, and that will go down, but it's not going to go down so exponentially that we can't do things for our staff in the future. And so we want to be really prudent with that, just so it's understood that, okay, it's not necessarily going out right now, but we want to be able to do things in the future for folks, and this is a way that we can do it and preserve it for everyone. So you'll notice that special revenue is at about 12.2 million. Well, part of that is ESSER 2 funds that when the budget, when our accounting software creates the budget, they roll that over. So 4 million of that is ESSER 2. So again, we're trying to be conservative with it, but like food service, it's at 3.9 million. Well, it's growing because of the funds that we're getting. So which we're really excited about, and I'm excited for Jo, and that she'll be able to do some things in her kitchens and those sorts of things, and that she'll be able to outfit this new kitchen at West with some really good equipment. So those are the things that we look at when we're taking these revenues into account, because we want to make sure that we're expending them in a fashion that is mindful of the public's money. So of those general fund revenues, local revenue is about 12.9 million. SEEK at the time was 18.9. But it's a little bit over 19 million at this point. We'll adjust that for the working budget. Beginning balance of 17.2 million. On behalf is at 11.5. And Medicaid, we keep at $200,000 annually because it does fluctuate so much. Now, that's something that Julie is able to use some of those funds, and this year she used it to buy another special needs bus. So those are great expenses to use on those funds that her staff generates. So the line item expense notables, we increased salary expense by 1.5%. And that's actually going to go up a little bit more for the working budget, given the salary schedule increase. However, it's still a conservative amount in that we feel like we're in line with where we should be. But I budgeted $400,000 to Greenville and South Elementary for the cooling towers that are going to be installed over the summer. So, yeah, they're getting started this fiscal year. However, the expenses will come next fiscal year. Budgeted $200,000 for resurfacing at East Campus, and so, I apologize, it went forward. General fund expenditures, instruction about 31 million, contingency is about almost 9 million. We feel like we're doing well on that, and we're going to be mindful of being able to use that in the future. Student support service, 1.5 million. Instructional support services, 947,000. District admin support is about 2.1 million, and that actually went down a little bit from last year. School admin support is at 2.88, and that actually went up a little bit from last year, just from some different line items. Business support service is about 1.27 million. Plant operations and maintenance is about 6.99 million. The nice thing on that is that the electricity, as you know, with our guaranteed energy savings contract, I was able to budget down a little bit on that so we can do some other things with those funds. Transportation about 4.5 million. Food service operations is about 48,000. You may be wondering what that might be. Those are like the monitors and those sorts of things that food service cannot pay for out of their funds. So the general fund kicks in for that. 349,000 is for community services. So committed funds, again, beyond what we've already discussed, those amounts are going to be determined in the tentative budget. Major renovation items that we do, and the retirement commitment. Are there any questions?
Any discussion or questions for Eric regarding this? I need a motion to consider our tentative budget for 21-22. Motion by Mr. Gerard. Second by Ms. Wells. All in favor of considering the 21-22 tentative budget, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? I hear none. We'll move down to the item we added, item S, and this is to consider approving participation in state set-aside funds and assurances for SO2. Eric?
Thank you. As we approved these items, I did not realize, and I apologize, that's why it was added late, was that I did not realize that you had to approve the assurances and the state set aside. So right now what the state has done is in our ESSER2 funds, we have to utilize 85% of that in direct services to students. You'd think it's all direct services to students, but they classify as direct services and what we classify are two different things. What we have done is where we're saying, okay, we're going to use 85% of those funds to pay salaries, which do qualify for direct services to students. And so once we do that, the state will has set aside $75 per student, which will get us close to like 320,000 or so. With the increased costs due to the health insurance things, it'll net us approximately 150,000 when I discuss it with Robbie. So we think it's a win-win. It's good for our students, and it actually gets us a little bit more funds to do things with. And so as we approve that state set aside, we also need to approve the assurances that go along with that.
Any discussion or questions? I need a motion to consider approving the state set aside funds and assurances. Motion by Mr. Gerard. No second. All in favor of approving the state set aside and assurances for ESSER 2, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I hear none. Thank you. Our board consent agenda items, just include approval of the minutes of the prior board meeting. Consider leave of absence request, consider declaring outdated technology surplus, consider declaring 10 North Middle Cafeteria booth surplus, consider emergency certification block of up to 5 positions for teaching positions within the Muhlenberg County School District for the 21-22 year, considering the facilities use agreements, considering field trip requests, and the addition of migrant student field trip.
Motion.
A motion by Mr. Dillard. Second by Ms. Barr. All in favor of approving the consent agenda items, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I hear none, and we're down. I need a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Ballard. Second by Ms. Bard. All in favor of adjourning, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? I hear none, we're adjourned. Thank you.